Hello and welcome to The Spectrum Show, a show dedicated to the Sinclair ZX Spectrum. Hello and welcome to this special festive edition of The Spectrum Show. I hope you're all having a good time wherever you are and whatever you may be doing, and thanks for watching when you really should be with your family, drinking too much, eating too much and shouting at the television. Coming up in this episode, we won't be looking at any particular month's news. Instead, we'll be taking a look at the Christmas top 10s across the first 4 years of the Spectrum's life. We'll also be looking at special Christmas-themed games and paying a visit to Typing Corner. So, it's Christmas, the busiest time of the year for software publishers. They had to get their games out on time to hit the very lucrative Christmas market, and the pressure was on to out-advertise and out-hype their competition. In 1982, the Spectrum's very first Christmas, the top 10 was littered with arcade clones, as the young market was tailored to the arcade junkies. Despite this, at number 10 we have Masterfile from Campbell Systems. Yes, that's right, there's a database program in the top 10. Things get back to normal at number 9 with an asteroid clone from Quicksilver called Meteor Storm. While at number 8 we have Football Manager, still a popular game today. Our first adventure game in the top 10 can be found at number 7, Espionage Island from Arctic Computing. And continuing the adventure theme at number 6, we have Adventure 1 from Abersoft, a version of the original adventure game. Now on to the top 5, and at number 5 we have Space Intruders from Quicksilver, feeding the public's demand for arcade action. Still in the arcades, and at number 4 we have Maze Man from Abersoft, again aiming at the arcade fans with this Pac-Man clone. And at number 3 we have 3D Escape from New Generation, a kind of top-down version of Monster Maze. And at number 2 it's yet again back to the arcades for a Defender clone from Silversoft, Orbiter. And finally, at number 1 for 1982 we have Timegate from Quicksilver, a great 3D space exploration shooter. In 1982, people wanted their favourite arcade game on the Spectrum, and there was endless streams of games that promised authentic arcade quality. Very few of them actually delivered these though, and the ones in this top 10 are far from perfect. It's also interesting to see the diversity of games here. We have adventures mixed with databases and management games. The market was still finding its feet, and there's something for every taste. And this was an important factor in making the Spectrum popular and attractive to everyone. Now moving on 12 months, 1983, and the games market had grown up a little, with original top-quality games being released by software houses. There were still arcade clones of course, but not as many. Instead we see the rise of unique games, and games that were adventurous and different. Players wanted originality and not just arcade rip-offs. They also wanted better quality games, and Ultimate Play the Game were raising the expectations of players. At number 10 was Splat from Incentive Software, a unique scrolling maze game. At number 9 we have Kong from Ocean, showing that the gamers were still interested in arcade clones. At number 8 we have Pool, a shift from blasting into a more slower paced simulation. And at number 7 were Ultimate Play the Game with Lunar Jetman, the follow-up to Jetpack. Technically clever games were also on the rise, and Ant Attack from Quicksilver proved you could do great 3D games on the Spectrum, and it sat there at number 6. Manic Miner managed to grab the number 5 position with its weird sense of humour and great platform playability. And at 4 we have Flight Simulation from Scion, proving not all gamers want fast action and alien blasting. Scion again are at number 3, this time with Checkered Flag, the public here looking for a pole position clone on their micro. And at number 2, another unique game, The Pyramid from Fantasy Software, the first game to feature their new hero, Ziggy. And the Christmas number 1 in 1983 was Attic Attack from Ultimate Play the Game, one of the new breed of arcade adventures with great graphics and playability. Another 12 months on and it's 1984, and the games market is still continuing to grow and branch out, both in quality and diversity. The advent of the new genre, the arcade adventure, had an impact, with games taking up 2 slots in the top 10. We also see games with much more depth and gameplay. Players now wanted more than just shoot-em-ups, they wanted a story and something they could immerse themselves in. We also see the rise of sports games, probably due to the Olympics that were held this year. So at number 10 we have Avalon from Houston, an arcade adventure with a story and a very different playing experience. At number 9 we have the multi-leveled arcade game Beachhead, giving the player different levels with different strategies. Pyjamarama from Microgen comes in at number 8. The graphics of the Spectrum are now being improved with larger and better animated characters. Vortex gives us Tornado Low Level at number 7, giving the player great 3D graphics, strategy and shooting, all in the same game. Taking the number 6 slot is Match Point from Scion, a great tennis game for sports fans. At number 5 is World Cup from Arctic Computing. Racing games are always popular, and Full Throttle from Micromedia gets the number 4 slot. Back to Vortex and their 3D engine, and Cyclone comes in at number 3. A slower paced, more strategic save 'em up than its faster cousin Tornado Low Level. At number 2 we have Jet Set Willy, which fulfills the player's need for a good platform game. And at number 1, no surprise considering the Olympics, is Daley Thompson's Decathlon. Not only was this game released timed perfectly, but it also fed the desire of arcade players who wanted a version of track and field. So as 1984 fades off into the distance, 1985 comes storming up, and we're still seeing a mixed bag of games, varying greatly. The arcade clones, of course, are still present, but we also have adventures, simulations and arcade strategy games. Dominating things this year though are fighting games, with 3 in the top 10. So starting at number 10 we have International Karate from System 3. Always a popular game this. And still with the fighting genre we have the brilliant Way of the Exploding Fist from Melbourne House, with great animation, great graphics and fantastic gameplay. Sports games are still popular from the previous year, and in at number 8 we have Winter Sports, offering a wide variety of sporting activities. Sneaking about like a ninja seems to have been popular too, and at number 7 we have Saboteur from Jarrell. With its stylish graphics and sneaky gameplay, this was always going to be a contender. Simulation 2 remains popular, with Tomahawk from Digital Integration getting the number 6 slot. Into the top 5, and at number 5 we have Back to School, the unique 3D looking arcade adventure catapult 'em up that was the follow-up to School Days. At number 4 we have Elite, proving the Spectrum could handle larger, more complex games. adventures too are not forgotten, and at number 3 we have Lord of the Rings from Melbourne House. The arcades come calling at number 2 with Commando from Elite, with players now wanting a vertical running and shooting game. And finally at number 1, covering both fighting and arcade genres, we have GR Kung Fu from Imagine, another beat 'em up from the arcades that players obviously liked. After seeing all these great games, what can we gather from looking at these charts? Well, we certainly can't say which genre of game rules supreme because of the varying game types present in all of the charts. We can't say any particular company were more popular than the others, nor any character. What we can say for sure though is that the Spectrum had a massive array of game types to suit every possible player's need. This ensured that no matter what you liked, whether it was adventure, sport, simulation, strategy, arcade, or any mix of those, you were sure to be able to get your fix on the Spectrum. And it was this fact that made the machine so popular. The consoles could never provide games that required text input, so adventures, war games and strategy games were out. They also could not provide easy access to programming, so writing your own blockbusters was practically impossible. The Spectrum gave us this ability. No matter what game type, control method or idea anyone had, it could be achieved with Sinclair's machine, and there was no end of companies who would take your game and if it was good enough, market it. The games market now has almost come full circle. In the early days, games were written by 1 or 2 people in their bedrooms. Slowly companies grew larger, and with it the risk of producing bad games. This meant that companies grew their development team and would only consider tried and tested game formats. Just look at the endless third-person shooters on the consoles today. No originality, no risk, no bouncing penguins, no crazy kangaroos and no angry telephones. But things are changing with the advent of mobile gaming. Again, it is possible for one person to write a top-selling game that is original and is not tied to any large company with its shareholders and fixed business models. And that's why the market has exploded and is growing fast. Things are open again, and the type of game is once again in the hands of the programmers to create whatever they like, and in turn, if it's good enough, it could even make the next Christmas top 10. What could be more attractive at this time of year than a Christmas-themed game? Of course, it didn't matter that the shelf life was very limited, or that they wouldn't be played much after December, or that, because of these factors, the games were almost always rubbish. In this feature, I'm going to peruse a few randomly picked Christmas games, starting with Bauble Blast. Bauble Blast by Stonechat Productions was released in 2012, so it's quite a modern game. Here you play Santa, who has to shoot the stinky baubles to score points. The screen is set out in a standard grid layout, with Santa at the bottom and the baubles at the top. As the game gets underway, the baubles move around randomly. Your task is to move around, not bump into them, and shoot them. Once you've shot them all, you'll move on to the next level, which is just the same except with more baubles. The game is fun to play, despite the simple graphics, but the main problem is the movement of Santa, at least it was for me anyway. Pressing a key sets him off at a slow rate, building up to his normal speed after a second or so. This can cause problems if you want to change direction quickly, and often causes the baubles to crash into you. Oh yeah! Santa can only also shoot one shot at a time, so you have to be careful not to waste any of your shots. Sound is used sparingly, but there's some nice sample speech when you complete a level. Overall, not a bad game, which I think could have been improved by just changing the way that Santa moves. On to our next game, and we have Christmas Cracker by Jonathan Caldwell, released in 2007 by Eurogamer. This game features one of Jonathan's game characters, Egghead, in his quest to rescue the Eurogamer team. This is more than just a simple platform game, and although it's quite small, having just 9 screens, it does have an element of strategy behind it. Once Egghead collects the shovel on the first screen, he can then dig down through the snow. Doing this, however, could trap him, so you have to plan your route to make sure that once you've rescued a member of the team, you can get back to the exit and continue your task. The game can be completed very quickly once you know the correct route, but it's fun to play, well designed and has some nice graphics and gameplay, as you'd come to expect from Jonathan. One certainly to try. Next we have Crimbo, a Gloop Troop's Tale, released in 2010 by Little Shop of Pixels. Here, Santa's helpers have gone on strike, and you have to collect all the presents from around the house yourself. A nice tune plays on the intro before taking you into the game itself. With lovely bright and colourful graphics, this game instantly appeals, although early plays proved a little tricky for me. Getting used to the jump mechanism takes time, but soon pays off. To jump for the maximum amount of time and distance, you have to hold down the jump key. You then stay in the air for a set period, after which you drop down. This has to be used to get over many of the obstacles and those long tricky jumps, or the jumps where you have to change direction in mid-air to climb upwards. The levels are nicely designed, and each one has a set time limit in which to collect the presents. Once you know how to complete the level, it becomes easier, but the challenge is, of course, completing them in the first place. Some screens allow you to leave in one direction and appear at the opposite side of the screen. This can be used to plan the fastest route through the level. A nice bouncy tune plays throughout, and the gameplay, I would say, is medium to hard. Or maybe I'm just rubbish at these types of games. If you like this type of game, it's certainly well worth giving it a go. Next we have Merry Christmas Santa, released by Icon Software in 1984. This game will only work on 48K machines, just in case you wanted to try it. Here we play Santa again, delivering presents down chimneys set across several rooftops. Santa can jump and climb down ladders, and as he passes each chimney, presents are deposited automatically. Of course it's not as easy as that, and there are things to avoid. Snowmen, snowballs, slippery rocks and icicles are some of the things you need to watch out for, although the snowballs seem to be random and difficult to see on some levels. Control is okay, although some of the collision detection is slightly off, especially around the holes that Santa has to jump. You can pick up items of food for additional points, but most of the time you were just trying to complete the level. Things move along at a fast pace, and with a few tweaks this could have been a half-decent game. As it is, it soon becomes frustrating as you keep falling down hole after hole, either because the collision detection is bad, or you get hit by a snowball that suddenly appeared right next to the edge of the screen, just where your Santa is. I wouldn't play this at Christmas, unless you wanted to spend the whole time swearing and feeling cheated. Next we have Moly Christmas, released on the cover tape of Your Sinclair in 1987. Gremlin Graphics produced this short platformer for their magazine, featuring their famous character Monty Mole. Here he must collect various objects to help him create and release a new game. Screen 1, he has to collect the game listing. Screen 2, he has to drop it into the mastering plant and collect the master at the other end. Screen 3, and Monty has to collect 8 tapes. Screen 4, and Monty has to hitch a lift. Screen 5, the magazine offices, and Screen 6, the newsagents. This is typical Monty fare, with moving platforms, ropes and enemies aplenty. The graphics are great, the sound is good, especially on 128K machines, that has a great tune. The gameplay is spot on if you're used to the other Monty games. Each level has a time limit based on Monty's health, so you have to be quick. This I found a bit annoying. I would have preferred it to play at my own pace rather than be forced into errors because of the tight time limit. Not bad for a free game though, and certainly better some of the ones that have been released. Talking of which, next we have Santa from Arctic Computing, released in 1983. This has to be the worst commercial Christmas game ever, and I'm really surprised Arctic released it. There are several mini-games and all of them are terrible. Let's just take a look at a few of them. The first is Peek in the Pudding. You have to find 9 hidden coins and avoid eating the worm. You move your 8-pixel hero around the pudding, blindly moving about in the hope of landing on a coin. The graphics are terrible, the sound is terrible, the gameplay is terrible, and yes, it's obviously written in BASIC. The second game, Stop the Snowflake, is equally as bad. Here, snowflakes drop down from the screen one at a time, and you have to move what looks like a laser to stop them landing. Again we have slow, jerky gameplay, obviously written in BASIC with terrible sound. I suppose we'll try another one, you never know, it might just be good. Here's Burst the Balloon. And here you have to obviously burst the balloons floating up the screen. As the game progresses, you move further down, making the game more difficult. But yes, it's basic, and yes, it's awful. There's nothing here that wouldn't be out of place as a type-in in a magazine, so why would Arctic release this? One to avoid at all costs. Lastly, we have Santa's Christmas Caper, released in 1991 by Zeppelin Games. This is a very thinly disguised shoot-'em-up, and not even a particularly good one, especially for 1991. Taking control of Santa's sled, you have to... never mind the plot, it's rubbish anyway, just fly around and shoot stuff. That's what a shoot-'em-up is. The game has terrible graphics and gameplay, and just screams that it was thrown out in the rush up to Christmas just to get money off kids. Some things can't be shot and have to be avoided, and you also have to collect presents as you go along. You also have to avoid the landscape, trees and igloos. If you manage to get to the end of the level, there's a boss fight. Because there are lots of things on screen at any given time, it can be quite tricky. In fact, it can be overly difficult, which gives you no real enthusiasm to get back and try again. It's not really worth the effort. Just terrible. No wonder I hate Christmas. Hello and welcome to this festive typing corner. Magazines had a flood of themed type-ins during the Christmas period. They included things like beeper songs and Christmas cards and pictures, and of course games. On my old tapes I found 2 Christmas games. One worked, the other one didn't. The first one, Santa's Mission, was from Popular Computing Weekly in December 1983. It was quite a long listing, especially considering it didn't work at the end of it. I did save it, probably with the idea of going back to fixing it at some time, but never got round to it. The game starts and draws a screen, and then stops with an error. I did spend a bit of time trying to find out if I could fix this or not, but didn't get very far. I'll post it on my blog anyway, so if anyone out there wants to try and fix it, be my guest. The second game did work luckily, and was called Santa's Nightmare, written by Derek Mearns, and published in the December-January 1985 edition of ZX Computing. Sadly I don't have the original magazine anymore, but I do have scans. It was a mammoth game covering 5 pages of code, but I must have found time somewhere to type it all in. The game isn't perfect either and does contain a few misplaced text messages in the stage introductions. Also looking at the code, I have modified it slightly to make it completable. Stage 4, in its original format, was just impossible, but we'll look at that later on. The game has 5 stages, all of which are explained before the game begins, and you get reminders of how to play each stage just before they start. So, stage 1 sees you controlling Santa as he moves through the snow. Here you just have to use left and right to make sure he doesn't run into penguins, snowmen or trees. Once that's complete, it's on to the next one, and this one's pretty fast. When the little traffic lights reach green, Santa's sled flies across the top of the screen, and you have to press the down key to make him jump out and parachute onto the chimney. Because the sled moves so fast, it's all down to reflex really, and just guessing the position. If you get it right, he lands on the house or the chimney, and you're into stage 3. Here, Santa has to jump onto a lift and take him down to the bottom of the chimney. Once at the bottom, a timer starts, which goes pretty fast. Before it runs down, Santa has to get off the lift. However, he can't get off the lift until the brick wall is gone. So again, it's all down to quick reflexes. Once that's done, it's on to stage 4. And here Santa's in the room and has to get to the Christmas tree to deliver the presents. He can only move when there's no snowball on screen though, and he has to jump over it too. This is the section that I had to change as mentioned before, because Santa always collided with the snowball right at the very end. Now at least the level can be completed. As you move nearer and nearer the Christmas tree, obviously it becomes more difficult, as the time between the snowball appearing and you jumping is less. There's a slight graphic problem here with Santa appearing twice, but this is how the game was. Once you get to the tree, he delivers the presents, and it's back onto the sled for the final stage. Here you just have to keep pressing the up key as many times as you can, before the timer runs down. In the background the code keeps a count of the key presses, but sadly doesn't display anything, so you have no idea how well you're doing. Each key press adds to the final height of the sled. Not pressing the key reduces it, so when the timer runs out, the calculations are done, and the sled flies off at the level you've attained, either crashing into the roof, or not. If you clear the roof, the game starts all over again for the next year. This game is not currently in the World of Spectrum archives, so it's probably the first time it's been seen since 1985. It will be on my blog to download shortly, and on the World of Spectrum in the next update. Well, that's the end of this festive episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Now you've watched it, you can get back to drinking and shouting at the television. Thanks for watching. See you soon.